So this video is a guide to putting together the Simplified Écorché Kit that goes with the Form Gesture Anatomy course. So it comes in 6 parts for shipping, and what we need to do is fit each of the joins together and glue them. Now, it's been designed over multiple iterations to make it as easy to do as possible. So you really should just be able to glue each socket and fit them into place. And it should all just sort of sit together while the glue is curing. So this comes in here. The arms there's just a little trick to this. There's a tab that I've attached to the inside of the clavicle so that it can be glued on to where the clavicle joins the sternum here. So what you want to do is just hook this into the rib cage like this, and then move yourself around until you can fit the main socket in, main sort of tenon, shaped tenon, mortise and tenon joint there. So the same thing on this side, just hook that in like that, and then move that around into place, and the head just slots on. So while it's tempting, I would really advise not just leaving this on your desk like this, because the joints are more vulnerable before they're glued. Because they have a big surface area, they're really quite robust once they're glued, but I wouldn't leave it standing around without gluing it for too long. So how do we do this? The glue that I like to use is by Loctite, and it's called Extreme Glue. You might not have that available wherever you happen to be in the world, but it's basically just a gel type glue. There's a super glue, gel type super glue that you can buy. I like that because the gel gives it a little bit of flexibility, because it's a thing which you're going to be pushing on, and just so that it doesn't tend to it's not too brittle and won't break. One thing to keep in mind is if you are using a super glue of whatever kind, it's a moisture cured glue. Now, if you're in a very dry environment, and I've had this happen to people, these joints fit together quite neatly. So if you just put super glue in and leave it, if you're in a dry environment that there wasn't any humidity in the air, it might not go off properly. So what you need to do is make sure that there is a certain amount of moisture there. So you could just use a very damp, slightly damp cloth, and just mark when you put the glue into, I like to put the glue into the female side primarily first, and onto these surfaces, so that we're not wiping any glue onto other things. So once you do that, you might like to just use a slightly damp cloth and just wipe that a little bit, or just breathe on it a little bit, just so there's some vapor from your air going onto that, so then that will help it to cure. In this case, I'm in Brisbane, so we have no shortage of humidity here, but this is a different type of glue anyway. So to put this together, as I said, I just like to put this, squeeze this, just to sort of try to get it onto those surfaces of the female side of the joint, and just a little bit on the flat surfaces where this is going to contact as well. Okay, so now I will slide that in, fit this one in, and this one should just click into place, and the whole thing should sit together pretty neatly. Okay, so that's going to be fine. That'll sit over on the side and dry, and I'd let that one dry for maybe 12 to 24 hours before you go on to the rest of the model. The other thing that you might like to consider is fixing. Now the model will sit like this without any base on it, but you might like to add a base to it as well. I like to do this for my students when I'm teaching this in person. Just gives it a little bit more stability. So what I do is I just take a base like this, which is about 6 inches square, 150 to 180 millimeters square, and I just put some sheet metal screws, just short sheet metal screws, down through into the holes in the base that are here. So that seems to work pretty well. And it can also be a good way of just locking the base together as you're when you make it. It's not critical, but if you've got the tools to do that, you might like to do it. You could also just attach to a piece of cardboard or a few sheets of cardboard and glue it down as well. That's also going to just help to give it a little bit more stability. So when you do that, the way that I like to do it is just to put it around the middle like this, and with a screwdriver or a battery screwdriver like this one, just put that down into each of these slots here, just so that we're making sure that the joints are staying together nicely as we do that. Just making sure that it's all sitting down nice and flat. On the base. This one's just wanting to come apart a little bit here, so I'm going to put an extra screw over on this side. That's looking pretty good. So everything is sitting, all the joints are nicely fitted together now, and it's attached to the base. So I'm going to put that aside to dry, to cure, and I'm going to use this one that I've already done so that I'm not working on one that is too vulnerable. So again, I'm taking my glue and adding it to the sides of the female side of the joint. Trying not to go overboard with this, but just enough to make sure it really pushes onto all those surfaces. And also the flat surface here. I'm just going on the flat surface as well. Okay, so put that on and push that down firmly. You might have a little bit of excess come out, and you can wipe that off. So now, with the shoulder joints, just something to say here. Again, I'm going to put glue onto the female side of the main mortise and tenon joint here, trying not to get it onto the external surfaces. But onto this little tab that's here on the inside of the clavicle, I'm just going to put a dab onto that so that I make sure that can connect between the two sides. So I'm just tucking in there and then sliding that into place. Same thing on the right arm. And I need a little on that tab again. Just coming around and contacting so again, just tucking that tab in and then sliding that forward into place. Okay. Make sure that's sitting down and sitting in the right spot. On the skull, I do find that because it's a tapering joint, this one, you might find it's easier just to get at the inside part of this tenon. So slide that on, and there we go. So there's our model put together. So I would give that the 12 to 24 hours that the glue, whichever glue you're using, recommends. In the meantime, you might like to check out doing a study of the rib cage, which is where in this course there's included notes on how to do a simplified version of the rib cage, the pelvis and the skull. And I'd really recommend that, because even though the focus in building up the soft tissues from this model is really like on this guy, it's very useful from the point of view of drawing and developing your drawing skill to do some studies of these central masses. So if you scroll down on this page towards the bottom, there is a link to activity 1 of lesson 1, and that takes you to this page which introduces, does a general overview of the torso, proportions and masses, and then it talks you through doing this simplified version of the rib cage. To do that, you'll be using whatever clay you want to use. It's not included with the kit, but you can just use potter's clay, which is very, very cost effective, or some other type of plasticine that you can get. A half kilo of plasticine should only cost $5 or $10. It's not expensive. So and this process, which I'll talk about in the next video in that section, takes you through a kind of outside in, or sort of a carving process to get to know about the rib cage. So see you in the next video.